Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Yael and today I want to talk to you about feminine energy. I'm going to analyze the book The Circle of Feminine Power by Larissa Renard. I came across this book when I was studying about how to increase my femininity and how to connect to my power. I don't think that this video is only for women. I think that if you're a man, it is important for you to know also how to support your woman and teach her tricks and tips about how she can feel better about herself, because when she's connected to her life force, everything is different. So basically this book is built in a way that the author is telling her story, her personal story, and combining her great-grandmother's story too. So it is written in two times. One is 2003, which is the current time. And then we also go back in time to 1903, which is the time that her grandmother tells her story. Now, the author Lara or Larissa actually finds her great-grandmother's diary, and in this diary there are secrets for seduction, secrets about men, and do's and don'ts, sort of recipes for success. And both of the characters, the author and her great-grandmother, they struggle. They fall in love with men and they don't really know what to do. They have a strong attraction and they're afraid to ruin it. They don't know how to get them. And I feel that that idea of wanting something in life is not only a romantic attraction. We can fall in love with something, with an occupation, with a place, with even a person that we are not romantically longing for, but we don't know why that thing doesn't want us back or why it is not working for us. So in a way, the laws of seduction or the secrets of femininity can work not only to attract men, but also to attract different things in life. Personally, I gave birth 2 months ago, and I felt like I really wanted to find ways to feel like I'm a woman again and to connect to that passion and flowers and blooming and romance and all of that. And I found that in this book. So I want to start reading. I'm going to read a mini chapter and then I'm going to discuss. I hope you don't find that annoying. And if you have any comments or any input, please write in the description box. So let's start. We're starting with 2003. This is Lara writing. Larissa Lara, it's the same name, it's her nickname. Part 1, A New Life and the Art of Enjoyment. Chapter 1, A Promising Acquaintance. 2003. Some people collect recipes for different dishes. Some gather recipes of beauty secrets. Others do the same with recipes for health. But my great-grandmother, Princess Varvara Vasilievna Renard, collected recipes of seduction. To be perfectly honest, calling the diaries where she gathered invaluable knowledge of authority over men recipes isn't quite correct. After traveling across almost half the world, the princess knew a lot, and everything that happened she wrote down in her secret diary. Like precious pearls, recipes for seduction are scattered throughout its pages. This diary preserves her memoirs of the love stories which occurred during her travels, knowledge of the ancient laws of love, descriptions of different types of men, and the feminine secrets given to her by the chosen, who preserved tidbits of the powerful knowledge of feminine power in different corners of the world over centuries. Just a little note after this paragraph. Notice that her great-grandmother collected information in her diary, and I feel that that really increases the connection to love, the connection to life. For a woman to have her secret diary, it's like her private place where she connects to the world and increases that energy, because when we write about things that give us joy, we actually add to it. It's a law of attraction. So this hints why the grandmother was so powerful and how she could attract so easily, because she valued it, she loved it, so she wrote about it. In her 80s, my great-grandmother still looked like a woman of 35 and continued to bestow her numerous admirers. Family legend has it that she was not exceptionally beautiful, but nevertheless had all the men of St. Petersburg at her feet. Nobody could explain how she attracted them, but any man who spent just a little time in her company ended up falling head over heels in love with her. While still very young, she married to a French Prince Renard, and upon his death, spent some years traveling around the world. No one really knows quite what happened during these travels, only that on leaving, she was modest, shy, and unremarkable, and when she returned, she had become an impressive, sexual, and lethal woman with fiery eyes. I inherited her passion for men, but her diary, containing its secret knowledge, had seemingly disappeared forever during all those revelations and wars. Ah, how keenly I felt the lack of its knowledge throughout my numerous love affairs. I continued to make all the same mistakes as everyone else. Why is it that we are not taught to build relationships, or how to make men fall in love with us, and how to avoid suffering at the inevitable partings? This is such a powerful part here. Why aren't we taught about relationships in school? Why aren't we taught about how women think and how men think? Great point. All of my relatives considered me to be an exact copy of my great-grandmother. I had the same red hair, big wide eyes, and charming dimples, but unlike her, I had no idea at all what to do with men. When I turned 28, the same age as my great-grandmother was when she began her travels, I was by then absolutely disappointed with men and had given up hope on finding my one and only and finally to marry. My grandmother had died by then, and we were in the process of selling her house. Perhaps because as a child I had spent long hours in the attic reading old magazines, I was asked to go through the things on the chance that something valuable would be found. What I discovered was my great-grandmother's diary, carefully wrapped in a thin silk shawl and tied with a ribbon darkened with age. It was a treasure beyond compare. My grandmother had other cares and never aspired to learn the secrets of her mother's life, and my father had no use of them at all. Yet here, at last, I held in my hands a real treasure, the diary containing secret knowledge and the recipes of seduction. I had no idea on that sunny June day how completely my life would change because of my discovery. So they also say that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So I guess that when she was ready to accept these secrets, suddenly this journal popped into her life. And I don't know about you, but maybe you're watching this video because you're ready to learn about these things too. And you attracted me, and I was attracted to this knowledge as well. And I feel that from the moment that I started reading it, it kind of relaxed me. And I think that that is what true feminine energy is. It relaxes us, it grounds us. Women are connected to the earth, they're connected to the elements. And in our essence, we bring peace, we bring harmony. And here there is a healing quality throughout the book, and I hope you're getting it too so far. Okay, so now we're going back to 1903. Now we're going to the section about her great-grandmother, that her name was Varvara. 1903. How suddenly everything can change. Until recently, I lived a quiet life in our huge apartment in Paris. But now, with the death of my husband, Prince Renard, my life has completely changed. I was wholly distraught and couldn't imagine what to do next. My parents married me off without so much of a care of my feelings in the matter, but simply deciding that a 48-year-old French prince was a favorable enough match for their 24-year-old daughter, despite the absence of any fortune to speak of. They met the prince during a stay in Nice, and the strictness of my education I have received at Smolny Institute had taught me to be obedient, so I dared not to complain. Besides, France has always been a dream of mine. However, I still don't completely understand how it is that I came to be married. But after 5 years of marriage, I had almost got used to a settled, quiet life, so that when I so unexpectedly and suddenly was left on my own, I became thoroughly confused. My aunt, Princess Sofia Nikolaevna Ilirikaya, on learning of my husband's death, came to lend her support. She was a legend. She didn't seem anything special from the outside, with a thin-lipped smile and gentle eyes, but something existed within her that forced men to turn their heads and stare wherever she passed, despite the fact that Sofia Nikolaevna was already well over 50. Having raised 3 sons, she deeply envied my mother, who had been blessed with a daughter, which was me. While I grew and studied at Smolny, we saw each other quite rarely, but I had enthusiastic memories about her magnificent gowns, glittering jewelry, and the smell of her perfume, and, most importantly, about her sparkling eyes, which drove all of St. Petersburg mad. Seeing the state of shock that I was in, my aunt, who had arrived from St. Petersburg for the funeral, invited me to stay with her for a while, to relax and to get over my sorrow. I decided to take a short trip to Athens and then on to Russia. I collected my clothes and jewelry and set out into uncertainty. So here there's another interesting note that her aunt, which was a woman that possessed this knowledge, that possessed this power, had sparkling eyes. And you can see if sometimes when somebody is excited for their lives, through their spark in their eyes, and I think that you could relate to it too. Sometimes you look in the mirror and you see that liveliness about you. And it doesn't matter if you lost weight or what you're wearing or whatever. It's something, it's like that being in love with life and being in love with yourself. So yes, she wore beautiful gowns and sparkling jewelry and great perfume, but it was that spark that was attractive. Okay, now bouncing back to the present, 2003, coming to Laura's life, let's learn a little bit about her. We know that her great-grandmother married to a prince who died, and now let's see what Laura has to say. I'm heading into uncertainty, I decided, on going to my first class at business school. I sought changes in my life and changes in myself also. For a long time, I worked as the representative of a Dutch company that printed huge vinyl posters for outdoor advertising. The durable and bright paints we used, the fine quality of our work, and my hereditary charm, as a rule, contributed to successful sales. But I wanted to start my own business, and before I set myself up, I decided to take some courses. At first, we were to leave the city for 5 days to stay in a hotel in a distant suburb, where we were meant to be taught the basics of strategy, marketing, finance, and management. Among the group of 30 participants, there were only 10 women, which offered huge opportunities not only for studying the rules of the business world, but also those of a very different nature. Certainly, such rules were described in my great-grandmother's diary, but I hadn't had the time to read through it, and I resolved to do so as soon as I finished the first course. I went to the town of Ripino, in impatient expectation of getting to know the people in my group. I had come to know every part of the narrow world of outdoor advertising over the years, and both the professional and personal sides of my life held no promise of anything new. But the thought of making 20 new acquaintances with successful and interesting men from 25 to 45 years old, as well as all the newness of it all, absolutely thrilled my imagination. I spent half a day preparing for the first day of the course, not knowing what to put on. One dress seemed too frivolous, another too strict, the third too romantic. Finally, I settled on a knitted white suit, which looked both serious and sexy, a short jacket with gold button and flared hip huggers, while initially severe in appearance, cunningly left a thin stripe of naked flesh exposed at my midsection that drew attention at once. Having twisted and turned a little bit more in front of the mirror and armed with a huge suitcase of clothes for every conceivable occasion, I left for the course. Apparently, most of the group have already arrived by bus when I entered the lobby of the Baltiets Hotel. Everyone there was actively engaged in general discussion. As I made my way towards the group of familiar faces, I stumbled over a suitcase left lying on the floor. Even in mid-fall, I felt how strong the hands were that steadied me on my feet, and the amazed voice that went with them. "Careful there! It is impossible to be so inspired by knowledge." I looked at my savior with gratitude. He was so usual to be almost invisible, with short whitish hair, a faultless light suit, and a slightly mocking cast to his cold light green eyes. "Thanks for saving me," I babbled embarrassingly, feeling slightly ashamed. The stranger examined me from top to toe, stopping just a second longer on my exposed navel and asked, "Where are you from, charming creature?" So here with the law of attraction, we see her, she was bored with her life, she wanted something new, and she almost knew that it's coming. She got excited. She wanted to look her best. She wore white, sometimes wearing white. Gets us ready to engage with something festive. I remember about myself that before important things that happened, I wore white and I met very interesting people. So note that. And then things just happened. She fell, he helped her, and the story begins here, right? So now pause, and we're going again back in time to Varvara. So let's see what's happening with her in 1903. "Where are you from, charming creature?" the dark-haired stranger asked me, still holding me in his embrace. His brown eyes looked mockingly and keenly. Immediately after boarding the steamship bound for Athens, I had already gotten myself into a mess. In search of my cabin, being unused to gangways, I slipped and would have fallen if the dark, tall gentleman hadn't grabbed a hold of me. I never liked men of such a type as his, but this one had captured my attention. I tried to imagine what he saw. An awkward, red-haired creature with huge turquoise eyes and charming dimples on both cheeks. The stranger was tall, well-proportioned, and something mysterious flashed in his brown eyes. The high cheekbones, the expansive forehead, sharply outlined lips which promised passionate kisses. And here I interrupted my runaway imagination, cautiously disengaged myself from his embrace, and after murmuring thanks, dashed off to my cabin and locked the door. My heart was pounding, not because I had just avoided falling, but because of an intense feeling of the strongest attraction for a man I had seen for only a few brief seconds. I nervously paced about my cabin, trying to pull myself together and to decide what to do next. In spite of having been married, I really had no idea at all as to how one behaved with men, and I thought about how much I still had to learn. So, what I find fun about this chapter and the previous one is that butterflies in the stomach, that feeling of being enchanted by another person, the beginning stages of falling in love, and I feel that's so fun. We often don't discuss that enough, especially when we grow older. I feel that some of these emotions are connected to being youthful or like a young love, but I know that it is part of us at any stage of our lives being charmed by a person or by a situation. And here she described that even though she was married before, she suddenly felt that feeling with that person and she didn't really know what to do. So moving forward in time, these are kind of quick back and forths. So 2003. How much I still had to learn, I whispered to myself on entering my room. Confused by the stranger's question, I answered mechanically from St. Petersburg. But the brief interview had terminated without really beginning. I was immediately surrounded by familiar and friendly people, greeted and hugged by everyone I knew. I somehow lost track of the stranger. Finally, having got the key to my room and seeing that my huge suitcase had been delivered, I took a deep breath. The first lecture was scheduled to begin in half an hour, to be followed by dinner. I fixed myself up and went down to the auditorium. The teacher looked at me with surprise and asked whether I was in the right place. Perhaps in Sweden they don't come to lectures in such splendid dresses, I thought, but there was no time to change now. I felt like a complete outsider, but consoled myself with the fact that everyone always notices and remembers such a person. Unfortunately, the one whose attention I wanted to attract didn't appear. He probably came to Baltiets to have a rest, I thought with disappointment, and immersed myself with great interest in a lecture on microeconomics, almost forgetting about what had happened in the hotel lobby. Still discussing the theme of the lecture, I went to dinner with my new friend Marina. "How was the lecture?" I heard a familiar voice say and trembled with surprise. "It was interesting," I answered after I turned back and met the familiar pair of green eyes. "It is a shame that I missed it. I had to take care of some things," the stranger said regretfully. "By the way, my name is Matvey Wiener." What a mad combination of a thoroughly Russian first name and an American surname, I thought. "And you? You disappeared so quickly that we didn't have a chance to become better acquainted." 1903, we're going back in time to the ship with Varvara. "You disappeared so quickly that we didn't have a chance to become better acquainted," I heard someone say. At dinner, I sat at a table with an old French couple. Quickly having eaten and pleading extreme fatigue, they went away and left me alone. Already finishing my dessert, I felt as if someone was watching me. Lifting my eyes, I saw my dark-haired savior from earlier in the day. "May I join you and perhaps keep you company?" he asked politely. "Yes, certainly," I asked. "I am glad to see that you are safe and sound. It is all thanks to your heroic efforts." "Yes, they should give me a medal for rescuing charming creatures." "Well, let me draw you one," I burst out laughing. "Only whose name shall I write on it?" "Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Mark Golber. I am a military doctor from St. Petersburg." "Really?" I was delighted. "I am going to the very city to visit my aunt after my trip to Greece. She also lives in St. Petersburg." "We shall have a great many things to talk about, I see," he said, smiling mysteriously. "But you still haven't told me your name." "Varvara Vasilievna Renar," I answered a bit coldly. "My God, so official!" he burst out laughing. Once again, I felt that I would drop to the ground, overcome by the strongest attraction. For all his appearance of restraint, it seemed a fire blazed within him, and that if I didn't run away, that perhaps I shall lose all self-control. "Please excuse me, I must go," I said, bidding Mark farewell. "I trust we shall meet again." "Yes, I hope that I can find you." Smiling back at me, Mark said goodbye. I wonder, I thought, what is he looking for in a woman? 2003, going to the Baltiets Hotel to the seminar with our author Lara and Marina, her friend. 2003. "But what do they all see in her?" Marinka asked as we watched Katya walk off with her newest admirer during one of the breaks between lectures. Over the next few days, we all had time to get acquainted and make friends. Perhaps the male participants of the course were interested in science, but it was the girls who busied themselves with analyzing the men and their chances of success more than anything else. I remained unattached to anyone in particular, or to be more precise, there were many interesting candidates, and I flirted with them all without favoring one over another. Everyone else simply looked warily at each other. Relations with Matvi still remain purely platonic, and now, standing under the March sun, we discussed how Katya attracted men and why we, so beautiful, so clever and free, remained in the company of women. Having agreed that to learn the secrets of seduction would be a much more useful thing in life than to study business strategy, we went along all the same to sit in a lecture in SWOT analysis. For me, however, it was as if the world had stopped and my ideas ran to the diary of my great-grandmother. I decided then and there that perhaps, just maybe, those rules which worked 100 years ago were in fact eternal, and that I needed to try and apply the secret knowledge of my great-grandmother to modern life. I imagined that I should discover a lot of interesting things for myself. Now, it's not that I'm sharing this book and reading this because I believe that women are just good with seducing and, they should rely on men and should not study business. Not at all. I think that women should study business, but if we really look at successful women in business having an empire, a lot of them are using a feminine quality in them that attracts their buyers, that attracts attraction, and then they know how to operate their business. Maybe sometimes a person that has a more masculine energy helps them run their business. The point is also that women get a lot of satisfaction from a successful relationship. Women care to have love in their life, to have a family, and a lot of women might be a little sad if they end up just having a successful business without a family or without falling in love and having a great love in their life. And I think that is what the author wants to say, and that is why she says it might be a better idea to learn the laws of seduction rather than the laws of business, because she was hopeless. She was successful in her job, but when she met this man that she was interested in, she didn't know what to do. And I think that we need to have that combination working too, to be strong with our money, with our business, and to be strong with attracting. Going back in time, 1903, to the ship. I should discover a lot of interesting things for myself. The sound of the waves told an eternal fairy tale of adventure, and the breeze played a staccato of impatience on the mast. The very same impatience was inside me. Though we chatted agreeably, Mark remained invariable, polite, and cautious. Mark's touches brought to mind a certain ritual, a ritual that was unknown to me. Every morning after breakfast, we went up on deck, and he gently wrapped my shoulders in a plaid. As if by accident, he pressed a warm hand on the back of my bare neck. My hair was swept upwards as fashion dictated, and I felt how he admired the sight of my tender skin. I grew faint and waited for him to continue, but I only heard the same old phrase. "Good morning. You are as fresh as the sea air, and I sink into the depths of your mysterious turquoise eyes." Then he brought coffee, and we began conversing about medicine and politics, Russia and France. Having heard this phrase for the third time, I was quietly enraged and decided that he had found it in some self-instruction manual on seduction and simply learnt it to use on such little fools as me. But when on the fourth day it did not appear, I began somehow to miss these words. On the fifth day, I already thirsted to hear them and feel heat of his touch on my neck. Finally, I decided that certain rituals were not so bad after all, but nothing more followed, and Mark still did not try to seduce me. Perhaps I was not his taste, or perhaps he was waiting for just the right moment. Then again, perhaps there was something I was missing. Now, notice that she starts to fall in love with him also because he's consistent. He's doing the same thing. He's using a charm. He's using different words. He's using a ritual on her. And that is sometimes how women test men to see if they're consistent. Jumping to 2003 with Laura and Matvey at the hotel. Something spectacularly unknown occurred in my life too. I understood that I had fallen in love. The general atmosphere of flirtation at business school did not pass me by either. And although the men of my dream never were blondes, the gentle attentions of Matvey, even in trifles, touched my heart. I wondered anxiously if he took such care only of me or of all women. But there the course ended, as well as coffeeing in the mornings and his constant "good morning, dear." That certainly was not so florid and refined as at my great-grandmother, but was repeated invariable throughout the 5 days we studied. I only understood that I had fallen in love on the last day. I managed to catch a cold, and upon waking that morning felt that I couldn't go to the lecture, nor even leave my bed for the matter. Marina knocked on the door and asked whether I would go to breakfast, and having heard my weak voice, promised to bring something up to me. And what a surprise it was when instead of Marina, Matvey came in bearing tea, honey, aspirin, and oranges. Whether his care was a display of politeness or a display of interest, I couldn't decide yet, but the fact that he did not make any attempts even to kiss me began to disturb me. 1903, going back, we are already noticing the differences between Matvey and Mark. Mark seems to know a lot about the art of love. He is seducing Varvara, and Matvey plays a role of somewhat colder. He is making a step. He brings things to her room, but he's not a charmer yet. So 1903, the things which happened had aroused my anxiety. I already started to doubt my own attractiveness. That sucks. The journey came to an end with nothing have occurred between us. I wondered how long Mark was going to communicate with me politely when I am exhausted with desire. On one of the evenings, a concert took place in the restaurant. I sat next to Mark and listened to the arias and felt that I was simply dying of passion. The inclination was so strong that I had a real orgasm just being near him, and he, for his part, seemed quiet. It is good that it was dark in the hall and nobody could see what was happening to me. I tried to take myself in hand and hoped that the dense dress and corset would hide my secrets. I never knew that such a thing was possible. Mark has gallantly offered me his hand, and walking near him, I noticed that he had felt everything and understood. Certainly, there are the rules of decorum, but it sometimes seems to me that they were created by men in order not to have to pay attention to a woman that doesn't attract them in all politeness. Because if a woman really is pleasing to a man, he will forget all rules of decency immediately. I was enraged, but managed not to show it in the slightest. Only having returned to the cabin did I give vent to my indignation. How dare he reject me, obviously seeing and feeling what had overcome me. 2003. Now, both of the women feel rejected. One was rejected when he came and brought oranges and teas to her room. She didn't understand why he didn't make a move. The other one felt like she's having this huge orgasm during a show and he does not communicate with her. He doesn't make a move. So, continuing where we left off with Lara. 2003. How dare he reject me, obviously seeing and feeling what had overcome me. As a result of my indignation, my cold disappeared. How could he slowly kindle a passion for 5 days and then, at the last minute, give a friendly peck on the cheek and say goodbye until the following course? Still boiling, I began to throw my clothes into my suitcase. Marina, who came to me and saw the look on my face, asked with anxiety what had happened. Did something happen with Matvey? When he went to treat you, I thought that the treatment would take longer, but he returned too quickly and left for some meeting immediately. Whether he is very skilled in controlling himself, or if all this care is a display of simple politeness and nothing more. Don't blow your top, the reconciliatory Marina said. It is time for us to go. My suitcase is already downstairs. Should we call somebody to help you with that? She asked, pointing at my bag. No, I will do it myself. You know, this rage has given me strength. In a frenzy, I grabbed the suitcase and carried it to the lift. However, my burst of energy soon dissipated when I met Gleb from our group in the lift. I was very grateful to him for helping to load our suitcases into my red Volvo. Marina, I suggest we celebrate the end of the first course. I then told her my idea, which came to me while I drive passing a string of police officers along the route to whom I was obligated to give 100 rubles at intervals of about every 500 meters or so. Where? Asked Marina with curiosity. At my place. I think I have a bottle of expensive Trappin cognac. My chief re-gifted it to me as a bonus for good work. Purely man's logic. Take, my God, that which we don't need ourselves. When we arrived at my apartment on the quay, I opened the cognac and cut a lemon, strewing it with cheese and ground coffee. Marina took a glass and toasted. To new knowledge, and don't fret over Matvey. I always console myself with the words, let's solve those who didn't get us, and let die those who neglected us. Thanks for the consolation, I smiled, sipping the warm cognac. And then Marina's gaze fell upon an ancient circular band of fine metal laying on the bookshelf. What is it? She asked, taking it in her hands and examining it closely. 1903. Now we get to the final mini chapter, which is my favorite. So pay close attention. Here the magic begins. Here we're diving deep into the core of this book. So far these were introductions to get to know the characters, but here I feel we're touching the real magic. 1903. What is it? I asked myself, at last having pulled out something which dug into my side. I stood in the middle of the temple of Aphrodite in the Acropolis and held in my hands a silver diadem darkened with age. But this moment was preceded with strange events. Coldly enough, I left Mark in Athens and agreed to meet him 2 months hence in St. Petersburg. I arrived at the hotel and, having dropped my things, headed straight for the Acropolis. It was already about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I had only 2 hours to see everything, when suddenly, having entered the half-destroyed temple of Aphrodite, I felt that it was important for me to come here at night. Understanding that I wouldn't be allowed to remain here until morning, I hid myself in a stall in the ladies' room, and at 5 o'clock they were closing. Something inside me gave me no choice. Everything gradually emptied out, and the few voices I could hear faded away. I waited a bit more, and realizing that the Acropolis was now empty, I ran into the temple of Aphrodite. I stood in the center of the temple and lifted my hands to the sky and felt how streams of energy from space entered my body through my palms, and streams of energy from the earth entered my body through my feet. I felt, in fact, that I passed into another dimension. I saw how the laughing Aphrodite took a diadem from the hands of Hephaestus, gazing at her in adoration. Then I saw how Aphrodite gave the circlet to the high priestess. I saw a beautiful ritual where 4 priestesses gathered in the circle of feminine power, and connecting hands created a funnel of feminine energy directed into space. I saw how the diadem was given to the strongest of the 4 priestesses who had managed to collect all 9 stones, to pass all 4 steps of initiation, and having experienced all the basic types of masculine energy, learned to direct it. Everything went dark and lost consciousness. In the morning, it all seemed to be a freak of my imagination or a strange dream. It was cold lying on the sand, and something cut into my side. I tried to remove whatever it was with my hands. It seemed that I was slowly going mad, and I began to dig while abusing myself for a naive belief in miracles. Certainly, the sight was worthy of description by some writer. A magnificently dressed woman digging frantically in the ground. You can imagine my horror and amazement when I turned up a darkened and twisted diadem. I did reflect on where it had come from, but simply accepted it as an omen of the changes in my life the future would bring. As it was already dawned, I returned to my refuge and waited for the opening of the Acropolis. When the first tourist appeared, I lost myself in the crowds. The diadem was in my handbag, and nobody paid any attention to me. Still shivering from the cold and the things I had experienced, a terrible weariness overcame me. I don't even remember how I reached my hotel. After a quick breakfast, I almost crawled to my room and immediately fell to dreaming. But the dream was a continuation of my vision of the night before. I dreamed that Aphrodite placed the diadem, which now contained glittering jewels, on my head, and I heard her say, "The time has come to return the knowledge of feminine energy to the world. The time has come to return the authority of women. You are the one who will show the way and who will find the right path. Many discoveries await you, with lots of new acquaintances, some disappointments, and many happy moments along the way. The time to gather the stones has come." I opened my eyes and laid in a stupor for a few minutes. I tried to assimilate and accept everything that I had seen and heard. Somehow, I had to gather all 9 stones to find power and authority over the world, and, most improbably, over men. I held the ancient diadem and tried to understand what was happening. I even tried to place it in my head, but obviously, even if its magic was real, it hadn't yet begun to work. With embarrassment, I remembered my silly and vain attempts to drive Mark mad with desire. Even though I am a good person, young and free, I still lack something. So this is the end of part 1, A Promising Acquaintance. I hope you like it. I'm leaving in the description box a link to the book. I have no rights for it. I'm simply sharing it to share feminine knowledge, feminine secrets, and this begins to unfold even more. What are those 9 stones that were discussed? What does it mean to know the 4 types of men? And I feel that maybe you can follow also the author if you're interested. She does have an Instagram. She writes a lot. She writes in Russian, but you can use the translator. And I feel that she is connected to some truth that is fascinating. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think. Bye.